I have a funny story about Steve Barton and DreadCentral before it was DreadCentral. Back in 2005, I worked for G4, and it was this video game network, these things called video games, about 10 years ago. And they sent us out to do a documentary about George Romero. Enough said, going out to Pittsburgh to talk to George Romero before Land of the Dead's premiere. I could die now already, screw the movie making thing. So we went out to Pittsburgh, and we went to the mall, and we went to the cemetery, we went to the mines, met a dude at the mines who was like in the movie. I mean, it was like dream come true. So we're at the premiere, and I had heard of this one website, the Horror Channel. Was it the Horror Channel? What was the?
It was the Horror Channel.
It was the Horror Channel. My God, it was this website called the Horror Channel, and back in the early aughts. There wasn't a lot of resources for news, opinions, really good reviews. The kind of stuff, the kind of conversations and the kind of dialogue that you want to have with your buddy who's also a huge Friday the 13th fan, or your girlfriend who loves Cannibal Holocaust. Maybe not the latter, but if you got one of those, you're lucky. But we were all kind of thirsty for. The kind of voice online that we had as fans. And I had always heard about this site, and when I was the camera guy for G4, so I was actually on the press line when Romero came by, and Nicotero came by, and Savini came by, and Simon Pegg showed up with Quentin Tarantino and Robert Rodriguez. I mean, it was just a total nerdgasm. And I'm in the press line, and I'm the guy that's holding the camera, and there's a crazy looking bald dude that's standing next to me who is just as excited as I was. Now this is a total media kind of blitz, and I'd say 95% of the people who were there were not horror fans, zombie fans, Romero fans. They didn't even know. They thought Romero was a car, an Alfa Romeo or something, but not the master of the zombie genre that we know him as. And this guy next to me was just beaming with everybody who was coming by, just the way I was. Like, my producer was like, "Oh, wow, you really know your fucking zombie shit." And I'm like, "Do you know who we're talking to?" And then the guy next to me is like, "Yeah, right, I know." Instant friends. Instant friends. Steve and I completely clicked, even though he was, crazy bald dude next to me, and I'm sure I was hairy Sasquatch next to him. But that started a connection. And and 2 years later, a year later, a year from that day, I was on the set of my first film, Wrong Turn 2, which, again, bucket list, I'm done, And when I was making the film, we didn't really have a lot of, support at the time, but when the movie was finished and I came back from Vancouver and started cutting the film, this was just around the time that DreadCentral was really becoming, a thing. And I remember Steve reaching out to me and being like, "Hey, you're the guy from Pittsburgh." And I'm like, "Yeah, you're the crazy bald guy." And immediately he, without it making me feel like he was just, media or whatever, because look, a year earlier, I was media, We were all kind of in it together. He was contacting me as a horror fan. And he had, I guess, read somewhere that I was just, the geeky kid going like, "Oh my God, I'm making a horror movie," and he related to that, and we immediately bonded. And next thing you know, we're at like Texas Frightmare back at like that later January, and I had brought the opening scene of the movie, and knowing clearly when you see Steve Barton, you can't forget him, that big boisterous ball of gooey life. And so when I was at Texas and I saw him, we like, "Oh my God, can you believe like how things have kind of come full circle?" And I remember taking him up to my hotel room. Let me fast forward a little bit. And then I showed him the scene from the movie. And that same shit-eating grin that was on the press line was there. And to see that kind of affection for the horror genre, and seeing that, I had made the same kind of connection with Steve that George Romero possibly, and obviously did, that I, was able to, have film as the same kind of communication that affected a fan, and I was a fan too. So that to me was like it's kind of the thesis of DreadCentral, because when DreadCentral, was kind of coming up with a lot of the filmmakers that are my peers, we all were all kind of in it together, and it wasn't anything where it felt like a shill. It felt like we were all kind of knights of horror, I guess you could say. Not knights of badassdom, thank fucking God, let's not talk about that one. But we truly were all champions of the genre at a time that it was really hard to, kind of get quality horror, like in that mid, 9/11 had just happened and people were, a little skittish on, more fantastical horror and the over boisterous stuff, everything kind of turned into torture porn. Nothing wrong with that. It was a phase, but it was a reflection of the times. And DreadCentral to me was, in a world of, kind of blistering in opinions and snark and kind of a lot of negativity. It was such a breath of fresh air to know that when I went to that site, there were people, and there were people there. It wasn't a name, it wasn't just a handle, it wasn't some funny nickname that you had on another site. These were people who had really funny, cool nicknames. You had your creepies, your spookies, your rottens. Ran the gamut. The farties. That was Andrew Cash. Yeah, see. But these guys were us, and they were our voice, and it was that voice that I appreciated, the one that was rooting for the filmmakers and being the fan that wasn't just out to tear a movie apart because we could. Like in the age of the internet, it's so easy to be anonymous and be like, that movie sucks, not knowing that there's a filmmaker out there who's probably reading that put their life into it. DreadCentral to me was the kind of the light side of the internet and of the horror world online. The reviews were insightful, but the people were passionate about it, and it always seemed like the filmmakers were very objective, but at the same time they knew their shit. Like when you would read these reviews and you go, okay, this reviewer clearly has a good opinion of this movie because they can reference an early 70s Giallo film, in relation to a film that came out today. It's like, those are the kind of things that I want. And, when the news would, to me, DreadCentral, whenever I would go and I need that news fix. All right, what's being rebooted this week and what franchise is being unearthed next week? I would be able to go to DreadCentral and read that stuff without any snark, without that kind of holier than thou attitude that a lot of sites tend to have, which can be annoying because all I want to know is who's making it and who's in it, and boy, that sounds awesome. And in most cases, they did sound awesome. And DreadCentral was always that voice, that kind of that hopeful voice. And I think that all is a testament to that creepy bald dude that was standing next to me, geeking out over George Romero in Pittsburgh, just like me. DreadCentral is us. DreadCentral is a true reflection of the horror fan, not with nary cynical bone in its body. It can be critical. I mean, that's good. We all need we need constructive criticism, but we also need that beacon of light that is championing both the horror genre and horror filmmakers. Look, I don't know where I would be career-wise if I didn't have DreadCentral really championing Wrong Turn 2, which, look, it's direct-to-video film, right? But at the time, and that was when, this is before VOD and before kind of everything kind of went digital and went on that route or went to video and didn't have a film, their film on 2,000 screens. Dread was one of those sites that saw my film with the same kind of integrity and the same kind of respect as that film that opened up on 2,000 screens. And that meant the world to me, and it wasn't because we were buds. I mean, I've gotten plenty of bad stuff from DreadCentral as well. That's their opinion, and that's good. We need that. It's healthy. But to me, that's so important for the horror genre right now. Is we need that sanctuary, so to speak, that kind of filter-free zone, that safe place, that oasis in a way, where we know that we're home with horror. And that's, to me, that's what DreadCentral stands for. DreadCentral is home. So, look, there's a lot of websites out there, there's a lot of blogs out there. You can probably get all your news filtered through some douchebag on Uprocks at some point. But if you want to truly feel like you're contributing to the right voices in horror and the people who are, pushing forward on the, and shining a light on the careers and the films, like, I guarantee you that every year DreadCentral, shines a light on a filmmaker or shines a light on a film that will eventually get to your eyes. And it's because they've curated, I hate that word, but it's true, because they've curated and they have the knowledge and they have the taste of true horror fans, and they know what you want, they know what I want, and they know that we like as horror fans. To have them be our voice, and to shine the light and raise the flag and make sure that we're not forgetting. There's so much content that's out there, and to have a site like DreadCentral that is able to curate the best in horror, and sometimes the worst, but at least you know about it. But the best in horror TV and the best in horror film and video games and comics, they run the gamut. So for pennies, for the cost of that stupid pumpkin scone that's going to be fucking sitting in your love handles, for the amount of that a month, you will be able to have so much great content and the hopeful voice of horror that we all need right now. You can get your snark elsewhere, but at DreadCentral, you know that you can have horror with hope.